Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Curcuruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation, the only podcast that goes behind the scenes of conservation in this country to see how it really works, how the funding works, how your wildlife and fish are paid for. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute, and I'm your co-host for Connecting with Conservation. I'm here with my fellow co-host, Jim Curcuruto from Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. How you doing today, Jim?
Doing good, thank you. You know, when we were just having a little pre-talk before hitting the record button, and we always jump right into our guests, but I want to do a quick reminder of who and what we are. So, Wildlife Management Institute, when did you guys form, John?
1911.
1911, so what's the math on that?
A lot. 114 years.
114 years. So combined, Outdoor Stewards and WMI have been around 120 years. But yeah, I mean, you know, so we talked to Ben, our guest, a little bit about why we started Connecting with Conservation podcast is to tell the great stories about how hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters support conservation. And there's always a connection with, direct connection when you buy a hunting license, direct connection when you pay an excise tax. But there's also those side connections. And today we got one of those stories, which is new to me. I just met Ben 10 minutes ago. I'm excited to hear and learn more. So without further ado, Ben Martin from Hunt Regs, why don't you tell us first about growing up and what you did outdoors and how you got into it, and then why you started Hunt Regs.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be on. Looking forward to talking. So I started off, I grew up in northern Indiana originally. Was ate up with fishing right off the bat. Kind of taught myself how to do that. Got my boater's license at 12. Was tearing up bass on a canoe through my early years, and just loved that to death. I moved to Florida when I was 13. And I learned you could catch sharks off the beach. Thought that was the coolest thing ever. So that was kind of my next pursuit. It's the biggest animal I could possibly catch without having a boat. Got really into that. Was a shore-based angler for a long time. Then my senior year of high school, I started working as a first mate on a tarpon fishing boat. So I got into that, did that for a few years, learned a ton, was able to work with probably one of the best guys around. Caught hundreds of tarpon, still one of my favorite fish. Pretty cool catching a 200-pound fish on a spinning rod. I'm a big fan of that, sight fishing and everything. And then got into the marlin thing a little bit as well in college, mating on boats, doing the marlin and the wahoo, the way far offshore stuff. Kind of hard to beat. One of my favorite places on earth is being 150 miles offshore in the middle of the night. Pretty cool place. I actually did not really get into hunting until college. I did a little hog hunting. We moved down to Florida and shot some birds and things, but I never had access to any private land. And I didn't know public land existed. That was just a huge disconnect. I'm a first generation, really fisherman and hunter. Didn't really have any mentors. Just kind of figured that out on my own. So I never really got exposed to the idea of public land. When I then went to college in Texas, my roommate was a hunter, and he introduced me to public land. And I remember first day getting out of the truck with a weapon on someone else's property. I was like, there's no way that this could possibly be legal. A little nervous about that, but quickly that uneasiness went away, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I can buy a hunting license, a $25 lands pass, and I have access to millions of acres. Their success is based on how hard you work. So after that, I was done. I was ate up with that immediately. Got my brother and some of my other buddies into it, and then we were traveling, hunting back in Florida on public land. My brother went to school in Indiana, so I was visiting him. We were hunting all over the place. And that really became my passion. I kind of say fishing is the gateway drug to hunting, and that was definitely the case for me. I really enjoyed that challenge, and just was diehard after that. The app idea arose. My brother and I are both diehard researchers, and we want to do things the right way. And we were spending a lot of time figuring out these different regulations. Obviously, they're totally different from the Midwest to the Southeast to Texas. And despite doing all that work and research, we found ourselves making mistakes. Not that we were shooting deer out of season, but for example, in Michigan, I was holding out for a buck, let a lot of does walk. Hadn't killed a deer yet before. Didn't realize I could go to the gas station, buy a $5 tag until the quota was up, which is 30,000. I could have killed as many does as I wanted. I was missing out on opportunities, and then things like in Texas, there's a lot of archery only areas. Show up to a place to gun hunt, and then you see a sign it's archery only. Where was that information posted online? So we thought that there had to be a better way to display those regulations rather than how they were currently displayed in a huge 80-page PDF. And if you're hunting public, you got to go find some obscure document somewhere else. So we thought there had to be a way where we could compile these regulations and make them specific to your target location and then the animal that you're going to be hunting there. So that's how that kind of the concept arose.
So that leads into a question I was going to ask you, but you may have partially already answered. And that was, a lot of times when somebody starts a new business like this, it's because, they were doing something wrong because they didn't know better and got caught. And you're like, I got to fix this problem now for everybody else. But it doesn't sound like you actually got into that situation. It was just the confusion over what to do and what you couldn't do and when.
Yeah, and I do have I'm a business and an environmental studies major, so I took some wildlife type classes, and I truly believe that the laws are there to maintain the quality of the hunting and then improve the quality of the hunting. Working with Georgia, 70% of their wildlife crimes are accidental. People didn't even know they were breaking the law, but you can't wake the deer back up after you shoot it. So even if people are breaking the law accidentally, it's ruining the management practices. So that was another thing that came about is if I'm doing all this research, the average guy probably is not going to the lengths that I am to stay legal, yet they're still hurting the management practices. So not only was there a business idea that we can monetize this kind of thing, but it really is making a difference in those management practices to help improve the quality of hunting. And you don't want, you want people to be 100% confident that they're legal when they step out. There's nothing better when you step out of the truck, you know that you're good to go. If there's those pieces that are kind of weird and you're uneasy, I don't even like hunting those because I don't feel good about it. I definitely have the mindset that game and fish laws are black and white. There's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And there's not really any gray area. And like I said before we started the recordings, if you have to cheat, you're probably just not very good. So I make a point to do everything by the book, 100%, and then I feel good about it when I am successful.
Yeah, I love the concept of it. Growing up, I'm a couple more years on me than you, but I had a similar upbringing. I didn't get to catch big fish, but I love being outside, starting fishing, getting outdoors. But man, I remember in New York Department of Conservation, when they put out their what we called the Bible in my family, we'd run to the dang town hall that first day and get through 2 or 3 copies of it, and that was it. That was like I read more of those than any other school book I think I ever read in my life. But yeah, because you had to memorize it, right? Because half hour before this day, that day, this zone, that zone, north season, south season. Just in New York, I deer hunted. Forget about waterfowl hunting. I'm a big waterfowler. And different zones, 2 of these, 1 of those, none of these, 4 of those, shore fishing, dabblers, divers, and all that stuff. So it's great to have something right in your hand when your memory gets a little less and less. And if you're hunting a new area or something like that. So kudos to you for doing that. How do you, I don't even, and obviously technology, but how do you go about gathering all that data and put it in one spot and make it easy for me?
It is a lot of work, and it really depends on the state, how they have things set up, I guess kind of how advanced they are with their GIS software or how they're managing their data. It's a lot of work for me to build kind of the framework in our database for an initial state because every state has the rules broken down differently. So once I build that structure, that takes a long time. Once I have that structure in, it's a lot quicker for me to go in and make updates, and we're improving that every week on how we can make things more simple. And now that we're starting to work with some of the state agencies, we're working on some automation things. If it's like obviously like those October 1st start dates every year, that's pretty easy. I live in Georgia now. Every single WMA has different dates for everything. So that just takes a lot of time. There is a fair amount of manual entry. You can't exactly write like a script or use like an AI to scrape that data or read that information because it's so intuitive. A lot of places, every WMA has a different manager, and they're the ones entering in the regulations. So the wording's different. So there is a fair amount of manual entry to it, and definitely manual QA to where my guys and myself, we go through every single piece and look at it and say, okay, what are the weird things in here? What are the things that people really need to know to make sure that they stay legal? And it's different for every piece. I put in notes, like for example, Indiana, some of their state game areas, you can't carry more than 20 shells if you're goose hunting. To discourage people from sky busting. If you can only walk in with 20 shells, you're going to pick your shots. But if you're from Ohio, that's a rule that you've never heard of before, and it's small text in the bottom of a public land area. There is a fair amount of manual entry. It's a lot of time. I would say myself and my guys, we have a PhD in regulations, like Don was saying. So it's much faster. I've gotten really good with GIS software and making it so I can streamline things. It's painful. The things I can do in an hour used to take me 2 or 3 weeks 3 years ago. But that's just how it goes. You learn, you get better. And I guess it's kind of a competitive advantage for myself as well now that we have these systems built in place.
Yeah. So Ben, I have a sort of a legal question because this is, comes from my experience is working in an agency, and that's what kind of error checking process do you have or verification process that, somebody didn't miskey a zone number or number on a bag limit? And the reason I ask is that many times where we had, the regulations are actually the law. They're in a code book, but that's not what you provide the public. You provide, like Jim said, a digest or as the way he said, the Bible that has, the plain English version of that. But if we ever made a case based on a violation of the reg, and the digest or the guide said something different, the court invariably said, look, this is what you provided the public, so that's what we're going to go by, even though the law actually says something different. So this is sort of a next level of that, or an alternate level of that to, here's information handled by a third party that's, if you miskey something, then, where does that burden lie then? I mean, obviously still lies ultimately on the hunter because they should follow the regulations, but you get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we have multiple levels of QA that we do. I have automated things built in that will throw flags if things are obvious, if zones aren't lined up, if we don't have we'll get into more detail on how the regulations actually work. But if the zoning is wrong and if you can't drop a pin in an area and line it up with the regulations, I have a lot of things like that automatically built in. The way the database is designed, it's very easy to see errors. The way we group things, I have a lot of searching built into the database. I have an admin facing panel that reads the database. We can go through and search everything. So we have a lot of automated stuff. We also just go through everything by hand as well. And I will check. We do our initial update, and we go through and we check everything. Then we look at what it looks like on the website and on the phone and things like that. Then I also am working with the state agencies. If they see something that maybe has changed or they don't think looks right, they reach out to me. So now that, especially that I have this relationship with the state agencies, that makes things great. Before we put things out, if I have questions, I get directly from the source, the guy that's writing it in the book, so to speak. So that helps a lot. Just like most of the state brochures, as well as like a Garmin GPS, we do have an I agree button, terms and conditions that this is not legal advice. This is a helpful tool to simplify regulations. It's still on the hunter to follow the law. So if they were to get, it's not going to hurt the state agency. It obviously, if I have an incorrect reg, that is not good for my reputation. We want people to be able to trust this. So that is really the goal. And that's where we shoot for 100% accuracy. And that's because we have to for the reputation. We want people to be able to trust us. That's why we spend so much time. And that is the reason why I don't have all 50 states worth of regulations in the app. It's too much information for where we're at right now to be 100% accurate.
Yeah. So as a follow-up to that, I would say, having written hundreds of regulations and reviewed probably thousands, it wouldn't surprise me a bit in your process of loading them in that you don't find errors in the regulations themselves, like a county that ends up in 2 zones because somebody missed it on the edit at the agency side. It happens, So
oftentimes, the biggest thing that I find is where the actual boundary lines of public land areas are wrong. So I'm going through and cutting those, and I try to get as granular as possible to where there's an archery only piece or a dog hunting piece, or you can't no centerfire rifles in there. I go through and I cut all of that stuff in my GIS software. So if you drop a pin in an archery only area, it's going to say this is an archery only piece. Because that's the stuff that'll get you. And in the Southeast, that's practically every WMA has an archery only piece or a weird little piece that you're not allowed to hunt. So I will not give, I do my best not to give bad information. I give as much information as possible, but if things aren't clear, I tend to stay away from it and say, hey, this is something you got to call the office or go to the website. Like I've been going through Kentucky regulations the last few days to get those updated. And there are a couple pieces that are like, there's just not good data out there. It's like, I'm not going to give you bad information. Call the local office if there's anything like that. Because I don't want to give bad information. Have somebody, hey, like I looked at the app, I thought I was in the right here. I'd rather have them do a little bit more legwork. But like I said, the better my relationships get with the states. Now that we're working with many in an official capacity, that's going away.
Yeah, and there's no way about it. It's a complex process because when you got hundreds of species and different areas and this, that, the other thing, it's complex. But it is nice to have it in one area. I just moved to South Carolina 3 months ago, and I pulled up that you have South Carolina on your app, and I know what zone I'm in, and it'll pull up a map to make sure, yes, York is in zone 2, and then it'll tell me as a landowner, I have 10 acres, what my privileges are, what I can and can't take, and how many per day, and antler restrictions. So it's great to have it in one spot. But I did notice when I was poking on there, well, first, before I get into that, it does connect to conservation because at my previous job, we tried to work with state agencies and not just to simplify the regulations as much as possible, because it was even more complex, I think, years ago. And highlight some of those things. I know some agencies have put in a new section, page 1, what's new this year, which was very helpful to those hunters, and that was from feedback from research. But it lowers, it's a barrier to new participants to understand that. So to have it in one spot and to have it as simple as possible is a great way to connect to conservation, because you get more people out there that follow the rules and understand stuff and stick with it because it's not too complex, because nobody wants to do the wrong thing, or just about nobody. So that's great to have, and it helps bring people out there. But getting back to the nobody wants to do something wrong. Well, some people do something wrong, and I want to clarify the difference between a hunter and a poacher, because I see on your app there you have a poacher's hotline. So what was the reason to put that on there? And then we'll get into my pet peeve and every hunter's pet peeve, the difference between a hunter and a poacher.
Yeah. So I actually met Wayne Saunders, who I know you know, John, at NWTF, I want to say 4 years ago. We didn't even really have an app. I was just going around talking with state agencies, and I was at the Ohio booth. And I met him, and he's the director for International Wildlife Crime Stoppers. Developed a relationship with him. I consider him a really good friend. And I'd gone to their conference just with the regulations, and they asked if I could help them build a poaching reporting system. We put together a committee. They were asking me questions, and I explained how expensive that building an app is and how long that would take, what the annual maintenance costs, things like that. And they're like, I don't know if we can swing this right now. But based on how my journaling system works in the app, I figured I could just put that onto my platform pretty easily. And being that our company mission is to better the hunting community through technology, I hate poachers. It's that I'm not a fan. So I thought this is a way that I could give back. I want to do a lot more in the future, but this was a way with my current platform that I could build something for the states that would work better than what the previous options were, or what they have in house. So I put together a team of game wardens from across the country. It was like, in your wildest dreams, what would the best possible poaching reporting system look like? And I built it for them, and I do that for the states for free. Doesn't cost them anything. I don't want to hurt them. I just wanted to give the public an easy way to get really high quality information to those game wardens.
Yes, so it's not just hunters, but the public as well. So explain, since you dug into this and know in more detail, every state's different. Some of them there's a 800 number or a website you can go to. and some of them, can you pinpoint if you're out in the woods, whether you're hiking or hunting, and you see something wrong, how does that reporting go?
So we actually have replaced their like website options. All the states still have their hotline, but we now have an interactive form within our mobile apps and on our website where we give a lot of prompts to the user. So the first piece is date and time that the crime happened. Then we have some georeferencing involved, or just like a Google Maps flow or Apple Maps flow. You can go in and drop a pin, enter coordinates, use your current location, and that is saved with the report. Then when it comes to software and apps, you want to treat your user like they're a 5-year-old. So we give them a lot of prompts as to what we're looking for. Rather than just an open-ended text box, tell us what happened. We're looking for a suspect, and these are the things that we want: height, weight, ethnicity, hair color, things like that. Distinguishing features on a vehicle, license plate. I know I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but a lot of prompts based on what game wardens want to then that they can actually go arrest somebody or make a case. Then I have it set up where, depending on the state, will auto dispatch based on those coordinates immediately to the relevant 2 or 3 or 4 game wardens that are responsible for that county or region or whatever. So it's providing them super high quality information immediately. So it removes the need for a human dispatcher. And then because it's a standardized format, it's very easy for them to manage those reports on the back end, so things don't fall through the cracks. And I also added in some things like. Do you want to follow up from a game warden? It's the public perception of there's not enough game wardens out there to actually make a difference is a huge issue. And before, I was doing some work with Georgia Outdoor News magazine promoting the poaching reporting system, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, this looks great," but I've reported 5 times and never even done anything. They don't have enough game wardens. When in reality, the game wardens definitely went out and followed up. They just didn't think that they needed to call the reporter again because that's not their job. However, I've added in some features where if you do want to follow up, you can say that, and now the game wardens will call and say, "Hey, we arrested this guy, or we wrote him a ticket. Thank you for doing this." So helping with that public perception that reporting people does make a difference. There are plenty of game wardens out there, and they are catching these guys.
Yeah, and Ben, as you know from recently we met when I was presenting on the Poach and Pay project, that we do have a number of issues with poachers, and one of the big ones is that from our surveys, only 50% of the people who witness an event they think is a poaching event would actually report it. And while I can't definitively say it's because it's a difficult process, in many cases it is. You have to figure out who to call. If you're not a hunter, do you even know what the agency's name is to look it up online? How do you find the phone number to law enforcement or to dispatch? And you get frustrated, or they don't even start the process. Where something like this, where they see it happens, they click a button on their phone, answer a few questions, and it's done. I think it's going to pay dividends.
We've also set it up to where it's completely anonymous if you want it to be. There is an option to leave a phone number and email address, but we're not saving user data with these reports, so they are anonymous. You see a lot of times the best cases are where a neighbor is reporting on a neighbor or a cousin or things like that, and you don't want that coming back to you. So we've set it up to protect the integrity of the reporting system for the user and for the game wardens.
Yeah. And I will say, I just disagreed a little bit on there's plenty of wardens out there, because our study also showed that we had some covering 5,000 or 6,000 square miles per warden, and I'm like, there's no way you can be effective over that vast. I mean, that's the size of some northeastern states.
Yeah.
And there's one officer to cover it, but
it's not a reason not to report.
Right. Correct.
If they get a report and it's worthwhile because they have the information that they can follow up on, they're going to go look at it.
Right. And it's also not a reason for officers not to follow up with the people who are reporting, because chances are if that person reported an incident, they're probably in a position where they may see it more than one time, and you want them to have a positive experience with that reporting so that they want to do it again.
And I will say on the other side, to help the public, I've built in a lot of accountability tracking for the game wardens. So if they get the call at 2:00 in the morning and they don't want to go look at it, their supervisors know everything is date and time stamped. So there is accountability on the game warden side that if they're not following up on stuff, the bosses know. So it's keeping them accountable as well to the public that they do need to do their job, even if they're driving 300 miles at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah. And then, just to clarify, we've got a broad audience for Connecting with Conservation podcast. And if you're not a hunter and you've heard there's some groups that try to merge hunting and poaching, there couldn't be two opposite things in the world, black and white, or plus and minus. And the easiest analogy is, guy walks into a grocery store, buys a $20 filet mignon, goes home and eats it. That's a customer. Same, different guy walks in, sees a $20 filet mignon, puts it in his backpack, walks out. That's a thief, right? Nobody likes a thief. Hunters hate poachers. They, take game illegally when they go out of their way, and they give hunters a bad name. So, there's a clear difference between hunters and poachers. And Ben, I appreciate what you're doing, putting this out there at your cost, no cost to others, but at your cost to put this on your app, make it easy for the hunters out there. So hunters listening, download the Hunt Regs app, and make sure if you see something, report it, and let's get rid of these folks that are giving a bad name and doing something wrong.
And we are, so it's not only for hunting violations either. It's really anything in the outdoors, or fishing as well, depending on the state. We have different categories for that, but dumping on public land is another thing, or really anywhere. It's anything outdoors that the DNR or wildlife or game agency is handling. You can report through this. It's just the regulations. We only have hunting right now. We will have fishing as well here within the next 12 months. So that's on the horizon. We're working on that. But yeah, anything outdoors. A lot of our reporters are not hunters. It's just people walking and they see a deer with their head cut off, something like that. We're getting it from all different walks of life. So.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that this is an app not just for hunters or anglers. This is an app for everybody who enjoys the outdoors, because if you're outside, your chances are you're going to come across an incident that you think is illegal, or definitely is clearly illegal, and you want something done about it. And dumping is a good example. Whether public or private land, people will back a pickup truck up and shove an old couch off or whatever, and it's like, here's an easy way to report that anonymously. And we do know from our poaching survey that one of the prime reasons people don't report is fear of repercussions from the person committing the violation. Well, if you're reporting anonymously, there's no fear of that. They don't know who you are. So I think it's a great idea, and probably one that we should have done a long time ago. We just weren't technologically smart enough to do it. We had to have somebody like you come along, figure it out for us. So how many states are you in now?
So we will have for this fall, it's going to be between 15 and 20 states with regulations. For poaching reporting, I want to say we have started off with Georgia last year. We have Maine on there, South Carolina, New Hampshire, and we just signed Tennessee yesterday, actually. So most of those states will be partnered with for regulations. Some of them are just going to be pushing poaching reporting, and then I'm hoping within the next month or so we'll probably have 4 or 5 more states pushing both poaching and regulations. I can't talk about it because we're not under contract, but we're growing like crazy. We had just Georgia last year, then Maine in January 1st, and now I'm thinking we're gonna have 10 by October. So yeah, but a lot of the southeast, northeast, and then we're starting to move into the west now.
All right. So where can people go to find more information on the Hunt Regs app? Obviously, even I know there's on Apple, there's a store for apps. That's where I found it. But I assume there's other ways, and social media and websites and all that stuff too.
Yep. So everything is Hunt Regs app. We have huntregsapp.com. You can do our regulation search on there. You can report a poacher on there if you don't want to download the app. And then on the App Store and on the Google Play Store, we both have the Hunt Regs. It's not Hunt Regs app, just Hunt Regs there. And then Instagram, Facebook, it's at Hunt Regs app. So we have a lot of things on how to use the app. We've made it so it's super simple for that regulation searching. We also have a paid upgrade. Everything we've talked about so far is free. We have a paid upgrade. That's a journal feature. Put in the date, time, location, what you saw, got on trail camera. We save all the historical weather conditions for that time at that location. And because it's in a standardized format, you can filter it by a bunch of different variables, whether it's specific target bucks or wind direction or date range, stand, anything like that. And we have a bunch of graphs to make those patterns really obvious. So that's super helpful if you're a deer hunter. Works really good for waterfowl as well with migration patterns and everything. It's really just same as the regulations. We're taking this mountain of data and funneling it into where's my best chance to kill something tonight or tomorrow morning based on these conditions, and am I legal to do so?
Good deal. Well, Ben, we appreciate you taking the initiative and creating something like this. And I really appreciate you making it so simple that even Jim can use it. That's important.
I love it. Absolutely.
And not to, we've talked about this when we met, but we've got to resolve this poaching issue in this country. It's hundreds of millions of dollars in animals being taken illegally, and we got to, because these animals are valuable. There's, folks look at it and say, well, they're not really hurting anything. There's plenty of deer. No, that deer costs money. That deer has a value to people, and in many cases, it's over the felony level in a lot of states. So, but they're treated as victimless crimes and are not reported in many cases. So this will be a big help in getting that reporting factor up. And we can just get the penalty stiffened up in the courts to react appropriately. Then we'll take a bite out of this issue. But we appreciate you being on. Keep up the good work. Keep innovating. That's the big thing. I wished we'd have had something like this when I was working at my agency. But maybe there'll be one of your new ones to come on board. So anyway,
with the innovation piece, if any of the listeners have any ideas or improvements on really anything. We're constantly pushing updates and making changes based on what people are reaching out and saying, hey, this would be cool, or this isn't working well. So I'm open for that. I have my email on the website, or it's Ben at Huntregs app. Ben at Huntregs app. Shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to hear from you.
Cool. Well, we appreciate all you do for conservation and for the sportsmen and women of our country, and just keep up the good work. And to our listeners and viewers, if you like this episode, subscribe. It helps us, helps you. It'll also let you know when our next episode drops. Like the episodes that you particularly enjoy. That also helps us. And other than that, we'll see you in the woods or on the water. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.